everyone. My name is Cami Jones, and I serve as the Associate Dean of Experiential Learning and Civic Engagement at Bard College. I'm a practitioner and academic with 12 years of experience in experiential learning, curriculum development, and design, and I welcome all of you to our fourth OSIN Telwar episode, Civically Engaged Universities and the Pandemic, Issues of Engaged Teaching, Learning, and Mentorship. In this episode of the series of the Open Society University Network and Telwar Educational Partnership, we examine the role of the university during this time of the pandemic, with an emphasis on engaged learning and an innovative classroom environment. As educators, we are compelled more than ever to engage with our students and communities, but furthermore, we are motivated in creating equitable, accessible, and innovative classrooms during this time, which we will delve into today. The Open Society University Network and Telwar Network partnership is aimed at supporting engaged universities that are responding quickly and positively to the COVID-19 pandemic. The goals of COVID are to collect and share stories of institutions and individuals who are taking action to mitigate the crisis, document practical steps and strategies that may be of use elsewhere, while also providing uplifting content and strengthening public support for engaged universities. COVID consists of two major parts: a 6-month webinar series entitled Adapting to the New Reality, as well as the COVID Student Engagement Award. We are at such a poignant time in higher education where university-based scholars, teachers, and practitioners are identifying ways to respond both locally and globally to the crisis at hand around COVID-19. The panel that we have today will highlight ideas about the role universities and academics can and should play as we move forward. We will share some ideas around how universities can play in addressing the pandemic, as well as leaning into what innovations should be used to help address the pandemic itself, as well as the needs of university instructors, staff, students, and community partners at this time. We have a tall order for us today, and we won't have all of the answers, but I know that this group of scholars are leading the way within their institutions and the network around engaged learning, in the classroom, and throughout our communities, and will direct us towards optimism and hope. With that being said, I will now transition to our panelists and open up the conversation to address their positionality of leadership and how their own work or the work of their institutions has shifted in the last several months. With that being said, I will first call on Elvis from Meridian Global University to kick us off and talk about his experiences and his work during this time right now. Elvis?
Thank you, Kami. Hello, everyone. I'm Elvis Akomane, the Vice President for Institutional Advancement of Meridian Global University. I'm a microbiologist and a university lecturer, and we have been greatly involved in the community work, healthcare services provision to thousands of persons displaced as a result of the armed conflict in Anglophone Cameroon. I'm aware we are talking about COVID-19 impact on daily life, but I want to start with the context of my region where we currently operate. We have an armed conflict that had been greatly neglected by the majority Francophone region of Cameroon and the international community at large. This armed conflict, which has led to the displacement of more than 1 million people out of their homes, with some internally displaced persons living up to 10 of them in a single room, has brought untold suffering to these people. The rule and daily functioning of our university had been greatly interrupted. Our schools have been shut down, some even burnt. Health facilities also burnt, with healthcare workers also displaced out of their homes. So my university, in partial functioning, so to speak, was greatly involved in providing basic healthcare services to the internally displaced persons. This basically included provision of malaria prophylaxis, long-lasting insecticidal nets to prevent malaria infections. We were also routinely testing and treating malaria, providing vaccination services to newborns, and also helping pregnant women with delivery. With this, we had healthcare in our mind and wanted to still ensure that despite the ongoing ravaging conflict, basic healthcare services are still provided. On the functioning of the university itself, because our campus, as one of the campuses that has been shut down within this region, we had to transition quickly to online teaching. So online teaching, which is more or less one of the novelties of COVID-19, has been part of our practice since 2016. We had developed a platform in partnership with Google, and we're using Google Classroom to deliver lectures, and Hangouts for online interaction, Google Hangout for online interaction. We had a lot of challenges with this because first, our conflict had been neglected by the entire country and the entire world, and online teaching suffered a great deal of acceptability. People did not believe that you could study and earn a degree online, and it was something yet to be integrated into the normal norm of teaching. So technological companies themselves were not interested in rapidly expanding the online services so that lectures could be friendly delivered to the students across the world and at the comfort of their homes. Thanks to COVID-19, sorry, I'm instead using this word, thanks to COVID-19, a lot of attention first has been brought to the conflict in Cameroon because the UN Secretary General called for a global ceasefire, which is gladly being welcomed here in Cameroon. So there's some relief in that aspect. And then secondly, online teaching has gained some attention. First, Google in particular, which is our platform provider, has developed Meet. We have Google Meet now integrated into Google Classroom. So instead of us dropping notes on Google Classroom and inviting students to go and have an interaction on Hangouts, there's a direct link now on Google Classroom where you could get a live video, just like what we are having now, and have every display done for students to follow. We have also been able to redefine the way we deliver community basic healthcare services to the internally displaced person, because instead of focusing on malaria and diarrhea, we have shifted our attention to hygiene, sanitation, and provision of sanitary kits, washing hand services, and also hand sanitizers to cope the spread of COVID-19. We have also moved from direct community interaction to, first of all, getting online consultation with the persons at home to, first of all, know what the problem is, maybe, and decide whether to dispatch a nurse to your home for healthcare. So this has been a great challenge for us, and we are hoping that more attention could be given, and we move out of not only COVID-19, but also our conflict, which has been codenamed COVID-16, which is our main issue too here in Cameroon. Thank you, Kami, and I hope to come back with more interactions.
Thank you so much, Elvis. I'll now transition to our next panelist, Kwame.
I always forget to unmute. Thanks everyone for being here this morning or afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are in the world. And also just thanks to Elvis for sharing what's going on in Cameroon and for that deep, deep perspective, which I think helps me put into proper frame some of the challenges that I faced as an educator outside of the context of war. So what are some of the things, who am I? Oh, right. I am a faculty member within the Human Rights Program at Bard Annandale, and also a faculty advisor within the Bard Prison Initiative. And I institutionally, I think Bard's doing a number of interesting things to respond to the crisis, one of which is the formation through the Bard Prison Initiative of a new initiative called the Bard Baccalaureate, which is a tuition-free, funded by scholarships and Pell Grants, college for people over the age of 24, to be reaching out to folks who in the Hudson Valley region in particular, but anyone who could find their way to campus. And the idea was to offer people who have been disrupted by COVID-19, who've lost their work, the opportunity to gain new skills, complete a college degree if they've already begun one in the past but hadn't, or to pursue one if they imagine themselves as not being someone who would go to college. And part of the idea is sort of to realize that COVID-19 has produced a real shock to a range of systems, and that in that moment of shock, people might be reconsidering their life in a broader sense, and that there might be room now for college. And so the Bard Baccalaureate, if you know anyone who's might be interested in it, I want to encourage you to promote it to people. The website is bac.bard.edu, and that's bac.bard.edu. So that's sort of a big institutional initiative that I'm a part of. And then also, one of the things as an educator that I realized is that though I do have like civically engaged projects within my classes, which I think I'll talk about a little bit more later on. As an educator, in the broadest sense, I realized that COVID-19 meant that I had to be a bit of a service provider for my students. They were experiencing displacement, they were experiencing deep uncertainty, they were experiencing fear and anxiety about becoming sick. And that meant that the purely academic pedagogical goals of the class had to be slowed down for a bit. And care work had to become more part of the agenda of the class. And I think that was a really important moment mid-semester, and one that I hope I'll be able to retain as part of my pedagogy going forward, to really, think about what are the circumstances of my students' learning environment, like what learning environment are they living in? What's happening at home? Are they physically safe? This was not always clear. And if I saw them purely as students, I was doing a disservice, I think. So, okay, I think that's where I will leave things for now.
Thank you so much, Kwame. I'm now going to transition to Claudia.
Yes, okay. Good morning for everyone. My name is Claudia Mora. I am a psychologist. It's an honor to be here, and I be able to share my experience as a Colombian University professor and when I was director of Forja for 3 years. Forja is training program of social change and peace in Javeriana. When the pandemic started, our principal gaps of my country related with socio-economical and political topics highlights. Let me mention it only one aspect linked with education. The ICT ministry confirmed that only 22% of Stratum 1 has internet access, while 98% of Stratum 6. How students from economic Stratum 1 have been studying during this time? In Colombia, inequality in access and quality public of education is a big gap. Virtual education reinforces and reproduces these situations. Today, we have completed 113 days of confinement. Reduced mobility, commerce reduces, social distance, closed schools. At the same aspects related with your countries. In this context, Javeriana University closed the campus in March 20th and virtualized academic activities, assuming new challenges to assure connectivity between professors, students, and staff for academic purposes. So to advance with Forja is a double challenge because Forja articulates the academic topics, the academic issues with local and regional problems. Involve the service learning methodology and work with community partners. When the semester started in January, 17 academic programs showed how they would involve Forja in their curriculum and identified different courses. When the mandatory quarantine began, 4 academic programs canceled activities. 5 academic programs focused on theoretical aspects related to the communities or topics of the projects, and 8 moved forward in innovative ways by making a keeping contact with the community. Teachers and community partners adjust their common objectives in different ways, virtualize their community-based learning projects, design informational and educational materials, and advance with virtual prototypes. When the semester finished, teachers, students, and community partners identify positive lessons about implementing Forja. Recognize importance of developing the leadership role of students. The students showed initiatives and autonomy to advancing the projects and high compromise. Second, digitize and virtualize of previously created during the created content to facilitate its dissemination. Really important, digitize materials, documents, infographics. Third, recognize the human dimension of the professor, because it's very necessary that the professor should be inspiring the students and the community partners too about the social engagement and the transformative action, and having built a strong relationship between university and community partners. Forja articulate work with different actors. Forja work with state, with community partners, with enterprises, with NGOs. Finally, I have a reflection about our experience with Forja. We needed transform delivered in the university because the traditional form for education about teachers and students in the classroom and focus in the content limited applicability and transformative knowledge. We needed to create new options that build an understanding together with collaborative style, professors, students, and community partners from different sectors and groups. Focus what the community needs, what is the pertinent knowledge for the local integral development, and consolidate strong values related with compassion, critical thinking, leadership, conscience, and compromise in the local and global realities. I instill these values in my students and invite you to adopt them as well. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I'm now going to transition to our final panelist, and that's Angela.
Hi, my name is Angela Obuswansa. I'm currently a professor in statistics and behavioral and social sciences. I serve as provost at Ashesi University in Ghana. So the question about how this shift in our era has affected my work and my institution, I'll look at myself, I'll look at my faculty, I'll look at our staff, our students, and I'll do it as briefly as I can. So my responsibilities not only have been shifted, but they've been inverted and turned up backwards and almost upside down in many areas. And so I had to respond in these unusual times with unusual means. So normally I would support faculty to be self-managing, independent, maintaining the status quo. And I would feel that I had done a good job if I were like invisible glue, keeping everything together, teaching and learning, moving as it should. But with the COVID era of disruption, the opposite was necessary. I had to be amplified, and independence was replaced with me being very direct. And it was actually welcome, being prescriptive, being there to advise, being on hand, having regular meetings, putting in new structures. For salary and for staff, we decided that even though we were not on campus, that their COVID effect was with the fact that they were not going to be paid. The vendors were not going to pay them. And so Ashasi decided to pay each of them, the gardeners, the security, cafeteria ladies, about half of their current salary to keep them going. We also provided our students, we have 50% of our students on scholarship, made sure that every student had a laptop, irrespective of where they were. We provided each student with Wi-Fi data, which we provide on a regular monthly basis. We provided student support services. The students were divvied up into little groups, and each member of the coaching and counseling was responsible for checking up on the students on a weekly basis. We set up a hotline to support our students and our faculty, and the 24/7 hotline kept monitored and checked on if anyone missed an assignment. We had a spreadsheet that has every single student's phone number. We call, we check up on you, we provide whatever it is that you were lacking and preventing you from doing what you were supposed to do. We were fortunate to have some community partners that provided us with some funding to allow us to do all these things. And so I'll just end lastly by saying that one thing that I take away is I've learned how to lead blind. I've learned how to lead blind, where for me that means that my team is feeling lost. They don't realize that I'm feeling lost too, and I have to be constant and keep moving and dynamic and allow for flux in the space and keep everyone close, and at the same time know when to let go. So in a nutshell, every aspect of our institution has experienced some kind of shift. Thank you, Cami.
Wow, thank you all so much for your insightful comments on not only how you shifted during this time, but also focusing on the external factors that each of you have faced, from initiating Google Hangouts or concerns around the environment on campus or off campus for students. You talked about equitable access to resources to do online learning, as well as the difficulty of managing local and regional challenges with community partners when you no longer have access to them in person. I think another key thing that was interesting that you talked about was the relationships with the different actors, whether it's your colleagues, your students, or the external community, and how do you keep them motivated to do this work, this engaged learning work, while also remembering your values and balancing your responsibilities as an educator and leader. And that is a lot, especially in a stressful environment that we're in right now in the world. And I know that a lot of work, planning, and quick thinking was needed to shift. And I'm a believer in sharing practical tools and successfully implementing a new way of teaching and guiding during this time. So I want to transition this conversation a little bit around best practices, tools, and innovative ways one can teach and guide their students through engaged learning, especially right now with the pandemics. So my next question I'm going to ask Kwame to kick this off is, what innovations have you observed in yourself, your colleagues, or your institution? So really thinking about the tools that you have used to successfully lead your students, but not only that, what kind of advice have you given your students to help them balance their personal, their professional lives during this time as well? So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this question. So I'll first ask Kwame to jump in and answer that.
Thank you, Cami. Also, just want to let everyone know my internet did just pop out. I live in the country, so if I disappear, it's not because I'm not excited about being here. It's simply infrastructural. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I found it to be a kind of exciting question as a pedagogue. Purely practically, in every class that I taught, I tried to make use of Zoom as an opportunity. One thing that I found was really helpful was to use the chat. So in every seminar, I did a kind of constant sort of court stenography of our conversation, and encouraged students to contribute their insights into the chat box. And what that did was it really democratized the classroom space in some exciting ways. There were students who had never spoken aloud during the semester, during the normal semester, who were willing to speak in the chat box, especially if their video was also turned off. So a bit of anonymity seemed to free them up. There were even a couple of times where students would put into the chat box that their sibling or their parent had listened to the conversation and they had insight into our topic of our conversation. And so there was this way in which, as we left the walls of the university, we opened it up, right, to more people who then, and that made things feel a little bit more democratic. The other thing is that in my classes, I do digital humanities and critical geography in a number of my classes. And so we were able to make use of the same data sets that we had been using throughout the semester because they are publicly available on the internet. And so that I want to encourage people to not be afraid of the digital. Yes, we love text, but when we have sort of digital projects that have civic engagement, in the case of the Kingston Housing Lab, we traced things like evictions, we traced homeownership in a small city to try to predict gentrification. We could still do all of those things in the context of the digital realm. And finally, I always encouraged my students, I tried to record lectures for certain classes, and I would always encourage them to take the lecture with them on a walk, right? To not be chained to their desk, so that the classroom experience felt like something that could be a bit more liberating, rather than being a chore and also so spatially confined. So I just want to encourage us all to encourage our students to mix the real world with their classroom experience as much as they can.
Thank you, Kwame. That makes me think about some experiences that Claudia has had that I think can add on to this conversation. Claudia, would you like to add to this as well with some tools that you've learned and used?
Yes, that related to the roles of the universities. Yes, I think the university has the special role in this time, that the exposing social gaps and structural social injustice. I think this is a big an important role to the university. In concrete, I think the universities need to be more pertinent and focus the research related with the offer solutions to the main problems of our cities and our countries. The university have the opportunity to show different economic models. Maybe it's necessary to advance in the solidarity and cooperative economic model. I think that it's necessary the universities advance too in the change of paradigms and advance in the collaborative ways. The pandemic revealed that it's necessary create new possibilities and promote other human values, inspired in the collective engagement and in the creative visions related to care our common house. Do you know the Laudato Si, that this pop card letter? Yes, that the name is Laudato Si. And in this way, that the universities have an important role in the society.
Thank you, Claudia. And when I'm thinking about roles, I want to go back to this conversation where Kwame was talking about the liberation of the classroom and best practices around that. So I'm curious about if Elvis or Angela would like to add anything else in regards to their experiences with innovations that they have either implemented or their colleagues that you can share with the group, especially for you, Elvis, around the sciences. we're curious about that.
Of course, we had a lot of innovations. I'm privileged to say I teach in two universities. One is the state and one, my own university, private university, Meridian. I also teach with the State University of Bamenda. So the state university had been very rigid about online lectures. So there was nothing there called online until COVID-19. So online teaching took the students and the entire staff as a surprise, as a pandemic on its own. So they were not prepared to study online, and the students were also not equipped. Just as Claudia said, there is this infrastructural and social discrimination among the students, which was really brought into light by COVID-19. Some students cannot afford an Android phone. Some cannot even afford a data bundle. And then suddenly you are asked to transition to studying entirely online. So my experience there was more than half of the students simply dropped out. They were not able to cope. They were not able to follow lectures. They were not able to write exams. And then, take continuous assessment. But exams was compulsorily on-site. So we had to meet students on site for exams who had never attended a lecture, who had nothing to do with continuous assessment, but they were forced to write the same exam with students who had been privileged to study online. I also spent a great deal of time moving from one part of the country to the other, helping colleagues to integrate Zoom in particular, which was the more affordable app because of its free services. I try to help colleagues with Zoom to get integrated. So I'm proud to say a good number of lecturers now are very, very apt using Zoom and other online services to deliver lectures. And in the long term, I look at it as instead a positive note because the infrastructural gap will be filled and many more students now will be able to study who could not afford to rent a room, who could not afford to relocate, to travel, to study at a particular physical location, will now be able to study. Coming to our community engagement services, I also want to note that we have had a boom in home care. Previously, everybody thought that when you have even simple headache, you had to move to the hospital for treatment. But because of COVID-19, they now instead run away from hospitals and now feel comfortable placing a call and requesting for prescription and a nurse to come and deliver some basic services. I think there's still a lot of positives coming out of it.
I'll just add a little bit and then you can move to your other question. So we are also a STEM institution with engineering and computer science. And so for assessment or for labs, we had oral exams in addition to take-home exams as a way to ensure engagement. We also had the lab technician doing the labs and the students watching, and he would intentionally make mistakes and so on, and they would be correcting him as a way of still getting their labs in, but living through this lab technician. We also, and I think Elvis mentioned different kinds of phones. I don't know how familiar you are with the social media version, WhatsApp. And so we would record every single class. It was a requirement for us. And the link would be sent via WhatsApp to the students who were in rural areas. And they would download the link and then do the assignment, take a picture of it, and send it back. With these recordings, the students who were on probation, we had a big spike of students who got out of probation because they said they could keep playing these recordings over and over and over again. We also insisted on higher order thinking and, where these links would be sent prior, like a flipped classroom, and then the Zoom chat rooms where you would have a lot of grappling over, even if it was math, and that seemed to bring a lot of engagement. And as Kwame said, students you typically would not hear speaking because of the safety of these small chat rooms were really engaged. And that's about a few things that I thought I could add to the, we also sent a letter to the parents and invited them to join the classes, as Kwame said. So that's for innovation. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your innovative ways of thinking and implementing new ways that we can think about this work, as well as engaging with our students and our colleagues. I actually want to go a little bit deeper into this conversation a little bit, because we're talking about how institutions have responded creatively at this time. But I also am curious about, there will come a time where we are in a post-recovery phase at some moment. We're not there yet. We're kind of in this acceptance phase. We're being brilliant with our thinking, our understanding of what we have to do. But I also have seen brilliant work done by colleagues, new skills being developed, as you touched on, creative ways of thinking and evolution around processes and structure. During and after this crisis, I'm curious in regards to, what do you think we need to do differently about the way that we teach and we mentor? Can you share some positive lessons for the audience who are all over the world to take back with them in regards to their experiences? So really thinking about, well, what are your plans that you're doing for the fall semester? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And I would like to ask if Angela wouldn't mind kicking us off with thinking about this mentorship piece and engaging in evolution, our process, being an evolution with our processes at this time.
Okay, thanks, Cami. So for during and after, one of the things that we figured out was important was, as we all know, this online teaching happened to us. And so faculty felt that all they had to do was move whatever they're doing on ground and just put it out there in the virtual world. And we had to work on the fact that it was more important to put out quality versus quantity, and to identify the essential knowledge and to trim. It took a while. So then we had to actually come up with a formula and say, make sure it's at least 2/3. If you were to trim your planned teaching, how much of it could you trim and what would you keep? And then we got to the essential parts. We also had to build a lot of humanization in the approach. I think Kwame mentioned how you get to find out how the different social economic status of our different students and how best to meet their needs. And so with our situation in Ghana, we also have the issue of connectivity problems and power outages. And so we had to do things like, due dates became 72 hours, because within the 72 hours, you would get connectivity and so on. So those kinds of humanistic pieces, and being available on WhatsApp for any questions. And then, I mentioned this already, planning to give every student a laptop, or let me move to something else. What we've been thinking about is that it is really important for us to come up with a course that would help students navigate uncertainty. It would be a mix of stoicism, systems thinking, all of that combined, that we think should be a course. And so faculty are thinking about it. We're trying to figure out how best to put this together. And then in the last part, it is clear that blended learning is here to stay. There's no doubt about it. From the very unsophisticated WhatsApp to the very sophisticated, and that we do need to start thinking about training in universal design and instructional design as part of who we are from here on. So thank you, Cami.
Elvis, Kwame, Claudia, either you like to, Claudia?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Cami. And it's really, really interesting that the Angela shared, because it's the same reality for us. Yes. And for example, for us, the important challenge in the universities and in the school, in general, the school, in the rural areas, the school have real challenges, because no electricity, no connectivity, no computers, yes, and how the teachers advance with the projects. And I think that is important include in the university or recover in the universities the pedagogical reflection. Yes, and now the first action was okay that everyone to the online education. It's okay, move to the online education, and very important and it's necessary, yes, to advance. Okay, and the question is, how is the role of the pedagogical reflections? Yes, because it's necessary that the teachers think in the process to educations and the didactics, the evaluation that is different, is real, that is necessary change all and analyze the curriculum for the all programs, for the all academic programs, and develop new skills in the teachers, but not digitize or digital skills only. Digital skills is very important, but not is the focus. The focus is the education. What kind of education our countries need? Yes, what means the human education? What values the universities and the school want to promote? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate that, Claudia, and also Angela. And I think the only thing that I would add is that I think for so many of us, like there's this sense that, or rather, one of our motivations in becoming educators was to reproduce ourselves, like reproduce our own educational experiences in our students. And whatever we might think about that motivation before this moment, now it's really impossible, right? We can't actually reproduce our educational experiences because the context of education is now so profoundly different. And so I think what I'm planning on doing, and what I hope that we all hope we'll do in the future, is to really imagine what it is like for a student to receive whatever it is that we are offering, right? What is it like to sit at the same desk every day and interact with a screen? What is it like to mix, textual and digital sources? What is it like to to experience the things that we're offering? I think too often as educators we can primarily think about what is it that I'm going to say, or what is it that I'm going to present or perform. And I just want us to really be thinking about the experience of learning in this environment, and then crafting classes that respond to that, not just thought experiment, but an actual kind of somatic embodied experience.
Okay, maybe I just add that, I mean, picking up from what Angela said, that the hybrid system is here to stay, to indicate that that is the fact and is a reality we have to live with. I'm hoping that university opinion leaders are going to pick up from the challenges experienced within this short time and really reflect on whether it is very necessary to always bring students into a particular space before learning and teaching and learning can be effective. We have seen a lot being done online. We can now redirect resources to addressing the infrastructural gaps that we observe. Was it network accessibility? Then maybe we rather invest in network than continuously constructing buildings that cost us far more than investing in the network. Was it accessibility to a mobile device? Here in Cameroon, the president engaged in the distribution of laptops to students about 3 years ago. It's true that this was not envisaged. And unfortunately, the quality of the laptops have not lasted up to this present time. That will again give them another way to think about when they will have to do such endeavors. You need to provide a laptop that will be able to stand the test of time and also help the student in study. First of all, the the hard drive of the laptop had a very, very small space which could not contain the volume of notes that we are dishing out to the students. That's already something they will pick up on in thinking on how to reinvest again in higher education. Online learning, which has been very, very exposed during this period, gives more room for more students to study than in on-campus or on-site teaching. We have students who do not need to travel. I mean, getting a visa, boarding a flight, or even simply relocating within the country, going to get a new room, new accommodation to study, to go back home. That is cost that can be greatly minimized with online teaching. Yes, I'm aware that there are certain procedures that cannot be effectively handled through the online platform. Those could be enhanced, and then, of course, technological companies are also create their own services, their own platform to accommodate these shortcomings. So I think it's a good way forward.
You know, Elvis, I think a key word that you brought forth to all of us today is the network, and how imperative it is for us to lean into this network. The purpose of this conversation today is to share best practices and tools and goals in regards to how we're doing this work with each other. But since we are a partnership and we're part of this larger network, I want to bring forth a new question to all of you and thinking about, how can we take advantage of the international networks of universities and colleges that we are a part of to do this work in the fall? How can we support each other and lean on each other's best practices?
Of course, networking is very essential in collaboration and in successful delivery of, unimaginable services that we could not do previously. We through this network, through this platform in particular, we've shared experiences, we've learned what is happening elsewhere, and we can be able to pick up from there. I've just understood and tried to accommodate what is happening in Colombia. And we have common challenges here in Cameroon, and implementing those solutions here in Cameroon can be a great way forward. And I think networking remains a very key pivotal, it holds a pivotal role in our moving forward together.
Thank you, Elvis. One of the things that I want to jump back to as we're talking about a network is not forgetting the importance of our communities. And we're talking about a lot of the challenges of this work and doing online learning and blended learning, but we're engaged institutions, we're doing civic engagement work, and we've had to shift our points of engagement with our communities because of the challenge of COVID-19. Our external communities, both regionally and locally, are faced with similar challenges where they're re-identifying themselves, but also thinking deeply about their ways of service, programming, and crafting their response to community needs. So my question for all of you is, what are you hearing from community leaders and community partners right now that may have been connected with programs that you've initiated within the communities, and what are their pressing needs? And do you see this as an opportunity for students to support the community, even if they are dispersed throughout and not are connected locally as we are accustomed to in the past? So what are your thoughts in regards to the community? What are you hearing?
Well, in the Hudson Valley, in the immediate surrounding areas of Annandale, there, like everywhere, I think, around the globe, there is a looming eviction crisis as state support for income of those who've lost their jobs dries up, and there hasn't yet been a clear solution for how people are going to pay their rent. And as the eviction moratoriums begin to also erode, and there hasn't been a clear solution for how that's going to be dealt with, in this area, there's a real concern that there could be a massive increase in the homeless population at precisely the moment when there could be a resurgence in coronavirus caseload. And that's a deadly combination. And so the class that I began this past spring in urban abandonment has now become its own independent effort, the Kingston Housing Lab, and we're working in coalition with housing advocates within the city of Kingston to pressure Ulster County to extend an eviction moratorium, to work with the sheriff's office to not enforce evictions, and to become, in the city of Kingston, one of now 3 cities in the state of New York which has passed a resolution asking for a moratorium on evictions until the end of the year. And the students are directly engaged in those efforts. In addition to the research around eviction patterns that they've been doing as part of the lab, research into the practices of particularly active landlords that they've been doing in part of the lab. We do eviction monitoring. So for those students who are still in the area, they attend housing court so there can be a clear accounting of how many people are having eviction proceedings filed against them. And we are also going to be working on the ground, i.e. doing social media, organizing and activism, petition writing, to again engage in political pressure of lawmakers, because even though we're socially distanced, the Common Council is still meeting, all of the political bodies are still meeting, and so they can still receive pressure. And even if it can't be a march now, it can still be a petition, it can still be letter writing campaigns. So all the things that one would do traditionally can be adapted to the present moment.
Yes. Okay, Elvis.
The experience here in Cameroon is that of skepticism. Everybody, I mean, nobody wants to believe anything. First, remember, we are in a conflict region where the people were fighting against the government, and the COVID pandemic came to them as another propaganda from the government. They don't want to see it as a problem that needs urgent attention and urgent practice from them. I want to indicate that we are currently summarizing findings from a survey we conducted to assess uptake of testing by these persons currently affected by the conflict. And our indications show that they don't just want to even believe that there's something like COVID-19. It was made worse by the government. I mean, just 1 month into the pandemic, the government relaxed containment measures. And most of them even believe, I mean, those who believed at first that there was a pandemic at all, see themselves now to be in a post-pandemic era. You see somebody telling you that in the days of COVID-19, the days of coronavirus, we are still living in the coronavirus pandemic, but most of them already in the post. I mean, those who even believed at all that there was a pandemic. So we need to build some sort of responsibility behavior pattern within the community. We have to re-strategize how to disseminate information to them about a serious issue that needs collaborative effort to contain. And we are hoping that with the new strategies we are developing, of course, I will not want to release the details of the data. It will be made public shortly here, but with the combinations we'll be having there, I think there's a lot that still needs to be done by the university communities, by the media, by the government, to build some confidence in the community, so that whenever they say something, the community should take them for it. And I mean, because they need a reaction from them. Yeah, Claudia, you can go now.
Claudia?
Get it quickly. And the students from Javeriana University work with for example, in the psychosocial intervention with families and with young people. And they advance with by cell phones, by WhatsApp, and creating material too. Yes, to the booklets and infographics and videos, and with this kind of the activities and improve the relationship with the community. Obviously, that was necessary adjust the objectives, the academic objectives. Teachers, students, and community partners work together with the same purposes. And in this case, that is necessary that they work together. The one important point for the university was facilitate the connectivity for the leaders in the community. Yes, and and advance with this connectivity and facilitate the ABC tools to work in the computer or use the cell phones. Okay.
I'll just add a few things. We also had our students initiate a few things on their own. We do have courses that instill in them the desire and the concern for others and the courage to do something. And so we had some of our students who they themselves were having problems with connectivity and data and all of that, recognizing that they were in a better space than the high schoolers and the elementary school students. And so they started organizing classes for the students who were not being catered for at all. We also had our Ashasi School Council decide that they had some money in their coffers, and they advertised, said, if you're in a particular position and you need some assistance, apply. And so they asked for some kind of, they put out this call and kind of weighed the pros and cons and decided that there was one particular family that needed rent money. And so they did, so there have been some of these individualized initiatives. These are the ones that I've heard of, but I hear that there are lots of them happening right now. And these are not university-wide, but individualized.
Thank you all so much. I think it's really important that we not forget about the importance of our community partnership in the work that we do and the service that we provide. I actually want to leave this conversation on a high note as best as possible. So I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to share a message of hope. What would you like to say to students and others around the world who might be struggling to maintain a positive outlook right now?
I want to tell students that you should be part of an era by identifying yourself with the innovations that accompanied that era. Here we are faced with COVID-19, where the positives of COVID-19 is how to comfortably study online, do things from home, avoid unnecessary traveling, and still get your dream attained. So don't be left out of this area. Take advantage, take the opportunity, and be counted as people who made it out of COVID-19 crisis.
I'll quickly add on the tales of Elvis that if you are still standing, know that you have grown in grit and perseverance. These are great tools for this society of ours that's in constant flux. And to say that this too shall pass. We've had the Spanish flu in 1918. We've had SARS, we've had Ebola. It might take a while, but this too shall pass. And so hang in there, keep developing yourselves, make sure and keep things simple as you do so. So that's my little bit of advice.
Yeah, and I say open the mind and open the heart and advance to work with others in collaborative projects.
I would say be kind to yourself. If you feel anxious, there's probably a reason. There's something to be anxious about. That's something to feel into and not to run away from. If you're feeling tired, take a nap. You probably need one. That's something to feel into and not to run away from. And to be well, because being well is the only way that you can actually help others.
Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists for leaving us. I feel very inspired and empowered right now to continue doing the work. So thank you so much for your message of hope. We're wrapping this up. Once again, thank you to the panelists and our audience who are here with us today. As the conversation amongst our panelists shows, we have a lot of work cut out for us. We are faced by many challenges affecting each institution. Yet, I think after this conversation, we can remain hopeful and optimistic in that we're united within this network. We have best practices and innovative ideas to share, and that we can see this as an opportunity, as so many said, for resilience and creativity. Please note that our next episode, episode 5, will focus on civically engaged universities and the pandemic, student stories of hope. That will occur on August 10th, 2020 at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and will include the COVID Student Engagement Award winner. So you do not want to miss that. Please make sure that you look out for details via your networks and social media pages. Also, please know that the recording of this panel will be shared through the OSINT Terroir network. And thank you once again. Keep the faith and know that we're in this together, and have a great rest of your day as we embark on this journey of engaged learning, teaching, and mentorship. Thank you. Bye, everyone.